Welcome to Velocity, the Vista Chamber podcast. I'm your host, Chamber CEO Rachel Beld, and it's my privilege to interview the movers, shakers, and change makers impacting our Vista community and beyond. And today I'm very excited, but in a calm and focused way, to welcome Lisette Hart. Lisette opened Vista's very first yoga studio in 2001, and she now owns and operates Yoga Branch, which is celebrating over 12 years in operation. Lisette is trained in a number of yoga styles and brings yoga to practitioners at every level. She personally teaches several yoga classes per week and trains promising students in her yoga teacher training program called Roots and Wings. Since 1999, she's taught more than 10,000 hours of yoga. That's a lot of yoga, and teaching students to understand and benefit from yoga is her passion. I can say from personal experience that her enthusiasm is contagious. So she has degrees in education and political science and has completed many yoga trainings, including an Ashtanga program with Master Tim Miller. Welcome, Lisette. Happy to have you here.
Thank you so much, Rachel.
Yeah, happy to, namaste.
Namaste.
Yeah. So I have to tell you that my very first experience with yoga was at your original yoga studio back in, I believe it was 2005, 2006. And I'd wanted to try yoga always, and I was really afraid to try it. And I had a friend that I worked with who went to the studio at the time, and she invited me to come, and you taught the class. And I feel like I left that class a totally different person. I've always been someone I've never been athletic. I've never been into sports, really. I never felt encouraged in that way. And not just from like a fitness perspective, but just I really got it, the mind, body, spirit connection of yoga. And so I just want to thank you so much for introducing me all those years ago. And I'm excited to talk to you.
Wow. Thank you so much. It's so great to hear. I love that you've had that experience. That feels so great.
Well, and I mean, obviously, a Shavasana with Lisette is like the best. So it's pretty good. So, okay. So I'm going to go way back in time, and I'm going to ask you, how did you find yoga? Or maybe how did yoga find you?
Oh, yeah. I've thought about that quite a bit. I think it was little pieces. In high school, I had a teacher who taught a world religions class.
Okay.
And yoga is not a religion, but it got brought up just in terms of some of the Eastern philosophies and just relating to Buddhism and Hinduism. So a little exposure in high school. And then I tried some of the moves. I tried some of the meditation, and I felt like there was something there that really clicked for me, but I just wasn't at a place in my life where I really could explore that, or I was ready to sink into it. So years later, my sister came back from a trip to India and showed me some yoga moves, and it just helped my back feel so much better. Within just a few poses, I was feeling like home. Like I recognized something that just was innately belonging to me. And to relate to what you mentioned earlier, I also was not an athlete, not the ball hitter or catcher. And I just had never really found a sport that really clicked with me. And yoga was a way of being physical that was also spiritual and mindful, and just felt like something that I could do that suited me and that I could really pursue and enjoy and benefit from. So
great.
Yeah, that's what brought me to it.
That's fantastic. So you mentioned about the meditation and the poses, and so I know that it's really kind of it's about the whole self, really, yoga, practicing yoga. But I'm dying to know if there's a really specific pose that's like your go-to, like that you really enjoy. Was there one specific one?
Downward dog.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just that stretcher, strengthener, classic pose that just kind of gets the whole body taken care of in 5 breaths or so.
Yeah. Well, I guess there's a reason
one.
It's the first thing that people learn, usually, right? I guess it's thousands of years old, so maybe starting with the basics It's got to be a favorite for everybody.
Yeah, it feels great. It would be so hard to pick a favorite, but that's
Yeah.
definitely one that if I had time to do one pose in a day, I would do that one.
Yeah.
And then there's another one that's a forward fold. It's where you get your arms back behind and stretch your chest. And it's just such a great pose for all of us to be able to do and free up the tension that habitually is in a lot of people's shoulders and neck. So.
Okay, good one. I'm making a mental note so that I can, if I just have a few minutes, I'm sure my coworkers will walk by my office and be like, what is she doing in there? But I also really like things that are like hip openers. I find those to be really, really good.
Yes.
Yeah. So was there a specific instance or something very specific that led you to go from being a yoga practitioner to teaching? How did that transition happen?
Yeah, just in a practical way. One of the reasons my back was hurting when my sister was showing me some yoga poses was I had been doing a lot of waitressing and bartending, and I worked at Four Seasons here in Aviara. And, yoga was helping me to be able to do my job. And then I started to just get a little more curious about more of the background of it. And it seems like one of the ways to learn more from your teacher is to take a teacher training, even if you really have no intention of teaching. So when I took a teacher training, I believe it was 1998, I really didn't plan on being a yoga teacher. I just wanted to learn more. And I found that I loved teaching it as much as I loved doing it. And I'd already had a degree in education, and it felt like, this is something I really want to teach. And the people who would come to class for the practice classes, they wanted to be there. So it's really nice and rewarding to teach a group who's there, who wants to be there.
Yes.
That feels great.
Yeah.
So
that's great. So I know you've traveled quite a bit related to your practice. So tell me a little bit about some of the places you've been and how has that impacted how you practice or how you teach?
It's not really a straight line, kind of a curvy road. But I have had a chance to live in different places in Asia for several years.
Wow.
So I volunteered. There's a Canadian program that's somewhat like the U.S. Peace Corps. There's similar pieces to it. And they sent me to Indonesia for a year. And I learned just a little more about the Eastern philosophies and got to live in that amazing country and around those amazing people. And then later went to Japan to teach English for a year. And I happened to live in a house attached to a temple. So there was these big empty room of tatami mats. And I wish I had known yoga back then because I had this perfect place to practice. But there were just little seeds of it that came along through being in Asia. And I've gone back several times now to Hong Kong and Nepal and a lot of countries there. And I think that really has been a big influence, just the philosophy and the way of living. I love the Western philosophy. I also love the Eastern. So it's just a great way to find that balance and explore that. So that's been a big impact on my life. I think it's just made me be a little more receptive, maybe a little bit less driven, more patient with myself. I just watched how I was treated as a foreigner in those countries and was so welcomed. And I don't know, there was just this kindness and community, sense of community that I really enjoyed. And that's what we create at our yoga studio as well.
That's wonderful. That's great. So what then led you to start a studio here in Vista? I mean, how did that come to be?
Right? Oh my gosh. I had never taken a business class in my life. So I wasn't someone looking for a way to make money through having a business. That was not my path. But I was transitioning from my full-time job, which was serving at the hotel at the Four Seasons. And I started teaching some yoga privately, and then that led to other referrals. So I had quite a good client base in Rancho Santa Fe, Del Mar, La Jolla. I would spend a lot of time on the road, driving around to different clients. And I enjoyed it, but you know how traffic is. Okay, it started to add up to be quite a lot. And then I realized if my clients went on a trip for a few weeks or a few months, then my income went down. And I just started feeling like it was time to have people come to me instead of always having to drive out. So it was a slow transition. But I, after 9/11, in September 2001, I had a trip planned, some more world travel. And obviously the airports and things were closed. The world was very different for a period of time then. And I started to think maybe this is the opportunity to find a spot and open it up. So I did. The first one was in Shadow Ridge on Melrose. And I was there for 2 years before we moved to Vista Village.
Great. So I know you have a number of other teachers at the studio, and you've had some of them have been with you or you've been partnered with for a long time. How did you find those other teachers and instructors to partner with you?
It's fun to think back on these memories. Thanks for asking these questions. So I said a moment ago, like it was nice to have clients come to me instead of me having to drive around to everybody. But I knew from the beginning, I had seen a teacher I really loved kind of burn out because she was the one teacher at her studio. So when she wasn't teaching, people really wouldn't come to class. So I had her life as an example of just trying to spread it out a little bit more. So I started going to different teachers' classes at gyms and things like that. And if there was someone I thought was, kind-hearted and had a sharp mind and a real passion for it, and they felt like someone I wanted to be around and relate to, then I would invite them and see if they wanted to come and teach. So I gathered the first group of teachers, including an octogenarian. Had my friend Mary, who is in her 80s at the time, come and teach yoga at the studio.
Love it.
So it was a big mix of ages. And then over time, the way I kind of hired or gathered teachers was really through the teacher training program that I offered. Once I started training people, I had a chance to really get to know them for a good 9 months or so, and have confidence in their abilities and their reliability, and the good-heartedness that they would share. So a lot of the teachers at the studio now are people who have gone through my teacher training, and then some have not. They've had their own path, and I like to have that variety at the studio.
That's great. That's great. Well, I know that being a mom is important to you. It impacted your studio. I mean, at one point you sold your studio to focus more on your family, and then now you're back at and have Yoga Branch. So besides that example, how has being a parent influenced either your yoga practice or you as a teacher or as a business owner? I mean, our lives have so many layers that overlap. So what's the connection between those pieces of you?
Oh, there's many. One thing that comes to my mind and heart first is just that I am here from Canada. I don't have any relatives at all in California or even anywhere near the West Coast. And most of my family is in Canada. So I love living here. But when I had my kids, I was really feeling like missing that, the mom and sisters and not having people close by for Sunday dinners. And so the yoga community, my studio, were really the witnesses to my children being born and growing up. And, I remember a group throwing a baby shower for me. And it was just so loving and just very organic. We really liked each other and connected, and people were happy for me. So it was really a family that developed here. So that meant a lot. So all along, it's just been nice to share news of my kids with others, get advice from people whose kids are a little bit older than mine, have some guidance through school systems. So in one way, it's that. And in another way, our kids just... they see all the parts of us, and I know they're proud of me. They know that side of me that's very authentic. That's the calm, positive yoga teacher. And they also see me when I'm frazzled or tired, and they help me. Their humor helps me kind of overcome my own stuff that I struggle with. And I love being a yoga teacher, but it has been challenging to be a business owner. That's not something that I ever felt a lot of confidence in or had a lot of strength in. It was definitely learning by making mistakes. So having my kids, just be there through that process has been motivating because, I have to pay for their life. So it definitely keeps me working hard, and I'm trying to provide a really good quality product for people. And then they just... It's funny because when they were little, I would say, I don't want to leave you guys to go to yoga class. I want to stay. I'd feel kind of guilty if I was going to go do a little self-care. And my kids started seeing how much happier and better mood I was in when I would do yoga. So they started saying, Mom, really? It's okay.
Yeah.
Go, please go.
That's great. That's great that they've been so supportive. And it's great too that, you came from Canada and you didn't really have family here. And now you have your own family, your children, but also your yoga family too, which is really nice to hear too. So you mentioned that, you came into this kind of by accident. It's like you said, it's not a straight line to own a studio and you didn't know how to run a business. So what have been some of the parts that you think have been hard? Like what advice would you maybe give to somebody who's starting a business or, I don't know, even starting a yoga studio, of some things to avoid or some things how to navigate?
Yeah. I have had a chance to talk with people. Sometimes people have come to me to ask me some questions like that. And, we all have to find our own path. So my way isn't necessarily anyone else's way. But what I tried to be careful with is just the basics that bring in more than you spend. Mm-hmm. It's just that simple. So what I did at the beginning that worked well was just to really minimize a big capital outlay at the beginning. Try to have overhead that was manageable. Mm-hmm. For me to authentically teach yoga well, I need to be able to sleep at night. I need to feel inner peace.
Right.
As often as possible, and life has its challenges and you have your months that are busy and months that are slow in any business. But I just needed to know that I wasn't in it so deep that the way out would be really difficult if times got tough. So tried to just manage expenses like that and make upgrades, once there was enough income coming in to maybe improve the flooring or repaint or buy some fresh props for people to use.
Right.
So I'm kind of just going in without doing a huge amount of maybe unnecessary risk taking, because you're already taking risks, signing a lease, hiring people, all those other expenses that come along with opening a business. But I tried not to go too crazy on the extras that were tempting.
Mm-hmm. I think that's great advice. And that really applies to businesses of any kind, not just in your industry, because I think bottom line in life is bring in more than you spend and, really make tough choices when it comes to what are the necessities, especially when you're getting started. So it's great advice. Thank you.
True. Yes. Just as we grow, we can add those extra things on
and
feel at peace about it. So that's what really has worked for me.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I like that you say too, that everyone needs to find their own path, but for new folks who are looking for someone to give them advice or show the way, you do have, all these years of experience and knowledge, and it's great that you're willing to share it with other people who've asked. So thanks for that. So I want to ask you, so what is the best part of the work that you do? What's your absolute favorite thing?
There's so much I love. I feel so lucky that I get to do what I love for a living. Mm-hmm. So many people don't get to, and I'm so grateful that I do. So I think one of my favorite things is if someone comes in maybe a little nervous or intimidated, which is really understandable. I remember going to a yoga studio for the first time and it's a little scary. So if someone comes in and maybe they have some back pain or they're a little worried about how it's going to be, to watch their transformation from the apprehension I see before class to how good they feel after. It's just, there's nothing like it. I just know that yoga works. And when there's a teacher, like the teachers at my studio, who can present it in a way that's really appealing and digestible and not intimidating and not overwhelming, just right. People come in sore and they leave comfortable. And over time with regular practice, I've watched people turn their health around with improvement in diabetes, weight loss, mobility, stability. So just, watching it work. Mm-hmm.
It must be so rewarding.
It is. Yeah. It's so satisfying because I didn't make this stuff up. I'm just sharing it.
Yeah.
I'm just sharing what my wonderful teachers have taught me. But I do love watching it land on people's lives and really work. And another piece that I love is the community, like I mentioned before, just whether you're someone who comes to yoga and wants to get to know other people, there's just a kindness. If you ever move to a new town, go start taking classes at a nice friendly yoga studio, and you'll start making friends. And, people watch out for each other. Someone's battery dies in their car. Someone from class will jump their car to get it started and help each other out if someone's sick, or, just feels good just to have people watching out for each other.
That's great. And I will say, I've been to your studio. Haven't been lately. I need to get back into it. I need to. I really, really do. It really is life-changing for me, especially with back issues and things like that. But I will say it's an incredibly welcoming environment. And anytime I've gone, no matter who the instructor is that day, if they don't recognize you, or even if they do, how are you? Is there something that you're worried about today? Or do you have anything that you need to worry about or focus on?
Yeah.
Or any injuries that you're concerned about? I've noticed that, and that's really comforting. I've also noticed too that I have gone to yoga at other places as well, and every studio kind of has its own vibe. And one of the things I really love about Yoga Branch is it's welcoming to everybody. There are people there decked out in their fancy yoga clothes, and there are people in just their regular, athletic shorts or whatever. It's like everybody's welcome. You don't have to look the part of this like TV yogi. You just show up and embrace it. And I really, really love that everyone there is so welcoming.
So great to hear that was your experience, and that's been your experience. That's what I hope for.
Yeah.
It's a vista. We have all these cool cutting edge things happening. We're just on the edge of the continent, where it's California, Southern California, and all these wonderful businesses and breweries and great city for business and, innovation. We're also farmers, and just down to earth people. And so it's just nice at the studio that all of that is welcome. My group, who was most eager to return to the studio once, we passed some of the pandemic closures that we endured, were the seniors that do chair yoga with us. They were literally calling me and pounding down the door, like, please open back up and let us in. They really missed each other and just doing that healthy thing together of doing yoga in chairs. So
that's great.
So yeah, we have classes and yoga for every age, from, the most basic gentle yoga all the way up to things that are a little circusy, challenging headstands and things like that, and everything in between.
Yeah, that's great. So you mentioned the pandemic and COVID, and I did want to ask you about that, because obviously your industry very, very impacted by COVID restrictions, not being able to be in person together in an enclosed room. Yoga is all about taking deep breaths and breathing out. So that, didn't really mix with COVID so well. So tell everybody a little bit about how you navigated that time period. And I mean, you're still here today, so that's fantastic. So congratulations. But tell me about that path for you during COVID and kind of some of the things that you did to stay relevant and stay open. That's a big one.
Wow, a lot of growth, a lot of change. We were a little bit ahead of the curve in terms of being careful. We were hearing this news, all of us, in January, February, March of 2020. And so we started just being careful with prop sharing and not having the classes too crowded, just in case. And then the word came down, of course, and everything. I think it was March 17th that we held our last in-person class before the closure. I have to thank my webmaster and my tech guy, because he was the one that was like, learn Zoom. We're going to get you on Zoom. What the heck is Zoom? And he got me set up on that. And we, over the phone, taught our students, trained our seniors who weren't even really that used to technology or using their computer in that way, to be able to get onto the classes. And then there we were, a bunch of squares, all like checking on each other and having these conversations. People would come onto the Zoom class like 20 minutes ahead of the actual yoga class just to chit chat with each other. So I think mental health, that just saved me and all of us. There was times when I would be at home and it wasn't even my class to teach, but I would have Zoom on with my camera off just so I could hear the friendly voices of the teachers and the students, connecting. So we scaled back the schedule a lot, but we kept offering classes that would, suit our whole roster of students. And I'm so grateful for the ones that stayed on. Understandably, a lot of people had to cancel and quit, which is sad and stressful, because you normally have some attrition each month, add-ons and subtractions, but never in 20 years had I seen the drop off in attendance that put us through. So it was tough. I mean, it was super stressful, and I'm really grateful for the teachers that adapted, and for the Zoom format, and some of the students who let me teach yoga outside on their deck at their home. And we would show up outside and practice together. So we just got creative and innovative. And not to give you too long of an answer here, but to tie back into something we were just touching on before this interview started was, you were sharing just about how there's been a learning curve for you doing this kind of an interview format and how it can be nerve-wracking. And so I had resisted being filmed as a teacher. I think I had a little piece of perfectionism in me that I have since overcome. It's been very helpful. And I was just nervous to have a class videotaped in case I made a mistake or said something I would later regret, and with Zoom, you just put it all out there. And there I was on camera feeling incredibly uncomfortable and self-conscious. And I made a couple of free YouTube videos of my classes just so students who couldn't keep paying for yoga would have some access to a familiar teacher. And it was really overwhelming. I was like a deer in the headlights trying to film a class. But we did those in one take. We didn't edit. We just, like, any mistakes that are on there are just real. So I think it just kind of honed some reality down to earth, imperfection. And it was wonderful just as it is. So
yeah. Well, you're such an incredibly authentic person. So I think that's great. You didn't edit those things out, because as someone, I've taken, a few of your classes, and it's a unique Lisette experience to take a class with you. And so I'm glad that you didn't edit those. I have to say, I didn't realize that you had some content on YouTube just available. So I have to check that out.
Oh, a little tiny bit.
Tiny bit that's fun. That's fun, though.
Yeah, sometimes it's the mistakes that actually make something fun. You have that moment where you go, other right side, or just those human moments that everybody kind of laughs and relates to.
Sure. And I'm glad you shared that, because we were talking before we started recording about just doing Velocity. Doing this podcast was something really new for me personally, and something that I love listening to people. I love hearing people's stories, and I love the opportunity to use this platform to champion the businesses and the people in our community. But it's awkward to be on camera, and it's, if you're not used to that, it is something new. So I can definitely relate to your experience when you took your classes online, and it lives on forever on YouTube. So, it's fine. It's great. Just put that aside.
And you're doing great. And thank you for doing this. And
thanks
for breaking out of your comfort zone
and
helping businesses.
Yeah, of course. So I want to ask you, what is something that you wish that non-yogis knew about practicing yoga? Like, what is one thing that, if you could just say, everybody, what would that be?
You don't have to be flexible to do yoga.
Yeah.
I think that's what I would say. A lot of people will say, I can't do yoga. I'm not flexible. And I understand why they're saying that. It's kind of like saying, I can't take a shower. I'm too dirty. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, if you're already stiff and feeling inflexible, yoga is going to at least help you maintain the flexibility you have and very likely improve your mobility. So I think sometimes people get a little bit concerned about the outward shape of the pose. Like, can I touch my toes? How far over can I lean? And we're just not that kind of studio. I think yoga is not really about that external shape. It's, where you're at. Maybe you did a big hike the day before, you're a little stiffer, or you've been doing a lot of yoga, you're more flexible. You're going to look a little different in the postures based on, those factors. But doing the postures and doing the breathing is always taking you in the right direction. So you gave me one, but I'm going to sneak in a second answer to it, which is just the breathing aspect. Yoga has its physical side, but it's so much about mental health and well-being. And post-pandemic, we've all been through stress to whatever extent. We've all been through some stress. And I know mental health professionals are really busy these days. I think for teens, for all of us, yoga can be a very affordable way of deep breathing, getting rid of some stress that we're holding in the body, and just feeling better, just feeling good. You walk out of the studio feeling lighter, with a clearer headspace and a lot of times more positive. So it can really, really help with depression and anxiety. So I snuck in 2 answers there.
Good.
But.
I love it. Sneak in more if you want to. I do have to tell you, so I wasn't sure if I was going to mention this, but I think it's appropriate. So this weekend, my husband and my daughter were out doing something, and I was home with my son. He is almost 8. And, he's old enough to play by himself. And I said, hey, I'm going to go hop in the shower and, I'll be out in a minute. And I started the water and I realized, oh, shoot, I forgot something. So I went out into the living room to get something. And he had gotten my yoga mat and had turned on a YouTube yoga video on the TV and was sitting on the yoga mat watching the yoga video. And I said, what are you doing, bud? And he said, I've decided I want to do some yoga. Sometimes I see these videos on YouTube and I like them and I wanted to try it. So I got your yoga mat. Hope that's okay. I haven't done yoga with him since he was a very tiny, like a toddler, and hadn't really focused on it with him at all. But I saw him sitting there with his legs crossed, and he was sitting in the posture and watching this. I don't even know how. It made me wonder, what else is he watching on YouTube? I need to check this, the privacy settings or whatever. But it was just so cool to see him do that. And so now he said, I really want to keep doing that, Mom. So we found some other kind of kid-focused yoga videos on YouTube for him to do. And I just thought that was really cool.
Love it.
It was great.
That's
I thought you would like that story.
What a surprise. Coming out of the shower.
I have a picture of it. I snapped a quick picture. I'll show you after. So.
Oh, that's awesome.
Okay. So what is next? What's next for Yoga Branch and for you?
Well, I would love to bring back some of our kids' yoga programs. We did have things going really well a few years ago. And then there were a couple factors, one being, COVID, and the other being just that our teacher that we were relying on for most of it shifted to something else in her life. So I'd love to bring that back on. Right now we're teaching out of one location in Vista Village. It's a location that I got to style and decorate as I wished. And there's just great wall space for everybody, great light. I really love it. I still would love to have a second location reopen or a new spot open up. It'd be nice to just be a little, have a little wider reach in the community. And so to grow towards that would be wonderful. If that doesn't happen, that's okay too. We'll see. But what we're really doing right now is some outreach where we're bringing yoga outside of the studio to other places. So we're teaching at some senior centers, active retirement communities, some apartment complexes that are providing yoga for their residents. And I'd like to keep that going with businesses. Any human resources departments that want to provide some affordable health and wellness for their employees. We're available. We can send qualified, professional, wonderful people to their site or have people come to ours. So a little bit more outreach like that.
Right. So you'll have the studio where people come to you, but then you have kind of yoga on the road where you can take it out to find people out in the community. I love that. Yes. That's great.
Yes. I have another dream I'm hoping for too. And I'm just saying it out loud sometimes is what helps us manifest things. But, in Vista, we have a large Spanish-speaking population. And I wish I was fluent in Spanish. If I was, I would teach yoga in Spanish. My kids have gone to a bilingual school here in Vista, and they're both fluent. And I would love to call out to bilingual yoga teachers. I'd love to find a Spanish-speaking teacher who can invite in some of our community members who might not otherwise have thought that yoga was for them.
Yeah.
So that's something. And just people who maybe feel like yoga is for someone else. Yoga really is for every age. Men do yoga. People who are of larger sizes, they do yoga. And it's good for everybody. It doesn't have to be a skinny little model or something, And sometimes I think that's the image of it. And it really is for everybody.
Yeah. Great. Okay. So now I have a few quickie questions for you. I'll call them my rapid fire. And so I want to ask you, what is a book that you think everyone should read?
Well, I guess since I am picking one, I'll go to something that I do include in my teacher training. And it's a widely read book in the eastern part of the world, in Asia, but not as well known in the West. It's the Bhagavad Gita.
Okay.
sometimes nicknamed the Gita. And spoiler alert, I won't give anything away, but it really is such a relatable story about how it feels in our lives when we feel like we're between a rock and a hard place, and we have a decision to make, and we really don't know where to go. And in the story, Arjuna, in a way, kind of pushes the pause button on his life at a pivotal moment, and dialogues with himself, does some meditation, some connection, and there's all kinds of great symbolism that comes in, but he's able to make a decision that's in integrity and move forward with something that's not easy. So I just think it can be a really helpful book for us to relate to at any stage of life. And a lot of Eastern tales relate to the characters from that book. So Bhagavad Gita.
Okay. I'm going to check it out. I think we can all relate to being between a rock and a hard place and navigating difficult times, especially after the last few years that we've had. But always in life, there are times where we have to make a difficult choice. So thank you for sharing that one. It's a good one. Okay. Tell me a song you always have to turn up, a song that you really enjoy in whatever way that means for you.
So hard to pick one.
I know. And I know you love music. You always have so much music going on. So it's a tough one.
I do. And I spent a lot of years living in Detroit, which had just the greatest music. And so it's a Bee Gees song. It's a disco song. And I can't remember the name of it. I listen to it all the time. I love it.
Oh, it's the Bee Gees? Okay. I know a lot of Bee Gees.
The one that's Come to Me on a Summer Breeze?
Oh, yeah.
How Deep Is Your
Love? That's it.
How Deep Is Your Love?
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Okay.
So we can leave it if you want, but
yeah.
How Deep Is Your Love? I love that song
by the
Bee Gees. Yeah, it was
so
a great
good
song. And then anything Motown. And then there's great peaceful yoga music, ohms, and
Yeah. That's great. I love anything Bee Gees. Did you see the documentary about the Bee Gees that was on maybe last year? I saw it on one of the streaming platforms. I don't remember which one. It's really good.
I didn't know.
I'll send it to you. I'll send you a link to it. I'll find it and send you a link because it's really, really good.
Oh, I love it.
Love the Bee Gees. Okay. So tell me something that inspires you.
Something that inspires me. Nature is the first thing that comes to mind. Yeah, just a lake, a beautiful tree, a flower, some scenery that just is there to be appreciated and left untouched. That's inspiring for me.
Great. Okay, last thing. So I want to ask you for a Vista business that you think deserves a shout out.
Okay. So hard to narrow down because I'm such a fan. I shop in Vista Village. I shop local.
Good. I love it.
Well, our next door neighbor to the yoga studio is called Milk Organics. They do a great job. It's a family-owned business and female-run, and everything I've ever had there is fantastic. So we love them as a neighbor to the yoga studio, and I really wish them well. And I'm a customer and a neighbor, and so go Milk Organics.
And they just expanded and made a larger space. It's really beautiful in there.
They did. Now you can sit inside to eat.
Yeah.
And everything I've had there is just fantastic. So I love it. And if I had to sneak in a second, it would be Little Cakes, Cupcakes at Don Hines Cupcake Shop. I just love it.
Yeah. He's great.
He's great.
He's going to be on a future show. So
good.
Well, yeah. So that's great.
He's a yogi.
Yes.
Yes, he does yoga.
I went to years ago, I went to a class and one of your classes, and I walked in and he was standing there.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I was like, oh, hey, nice to see you here. So that was cool. So Lisette, I want to thank you so much for joining me today. It's been really nice getting to chat with you and to share some of your story and to learn more about you. And I really appreciate you taking the time to be here and to share with us.
Thank you so much. It was such a pleasure. I'm not used to doing interviews like this. And I think if I could give myself some advice, it would be on my shirt, which is to breathe. I think I held my breath a little bit during this. But you made it so comfortable. And just such a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Lisette. So thank you so much to our guest today, Lisette. And thank you all for listening to Velocity. If you like what you heard, please subscribe and tell a friend. Help us move Vista forward with Velocity. Thank you for tuning into Velocity, the Vista Chamber podcast, where we hear from the movers, shakers, and changemakers impacting Vista, California. To hear the latest from Velocity, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. The Vista Chamber of Commerce is a nonprofit organization which serves as a catalyst to business growth. Visit us online at vistachamber.org.